DI von Briesen, Tropical Teachers, Moodle 1.9 Gradebook, Section H, talking about categories. We've covered the different aggregation types. We've talked a little bit about extra credit, and now we're going to talk about how to break your course gradebook up into different categories. So a typical thing one might want to do is have assignments and tests. So here you see a gradebook which has just ignore the fact that these are all offline assignments. So they're all activities. Activities are graded. They can be categorized in the gradebook. So at the moment we have a news forum, which is extra credit, and we have a bunch of other things. So let's just create two categories. One category is going to be all the classwork, and another category will be the tests or quizzes. And at the moment we only have a midterm and a final that would be our tests, and then everything else we'll just call that general work or something like that. So where do we do that? We'll look up, and there's nothing for categories here that's obvious. New category, new category. Oh, down at the bottom, right? Add category. So we click that link, and we'll give it a category name. So I'll start with those two, and I'll just call it tests. And notice again we have this aggregation choice, and it matches exactly all those other things. So all we're doing is preempting the next screen. Let's look at show advanced. And then we have, this is a little tricky, we have aggregate only non-empty grades. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means it's not going to count empty grades. So if somebody didn't take it, it won't count. Now that's got good and bad sides. The bad side is if they don't take something important, they might think they're doing well. So I'll leave it to you to decide whether or not you need that. And then if you have a category within a category, you may want to aggregate that. I would think you would, but we'll leave that aside for now. Overly complicated. And then you've got the highest and the lowest, and we'll leave that alone as well. But those options are there if you're one of those teachers that really wants to get into it. And then we can actually do other names and things. If I hide the advanced, those things don't even show up there. So when in doubt, I'm going to leave it alone, and we'll just leave everything else. So grade type is set to value. There's no scale. Maximum is 100, minimum is 0, and we'll see what we do with this. So I save the changes. And now you see I have this other thing down here. It's a different color, in this case light blue, and this is just this particular theme. And there's another category with a category total called tests, but there's nothing in it. So what I'm going to do is actually pick my final and my midterm, and what I can do, I believe, is I check them. Actually, I should just move them down here. So I'll move this, and it asks me, refreshes, where would I like to move it? And I would like to move it down into the test category. Or alternatively, we have the drop down here. So another way to do it would be to check the item, and it says move selected item, so it doesn't allow it there. So I guess that's not an alternative. Although there's another checkbox on the others. That's the extra credit checkbox, my mistake. Check here, and now we can move the selected item into tests. Let's make sure you can see that. So we check on the right here to select it and move selected item to tests. So there are two ways to move things. You can either use the up-down arrows, or you can use the drop-down. Now, when we use the drop-down, it took us out. The advantage of the drop-down is it would allow us to do multiples. So we'll see that in a bit. So now we have one category with sort of general, and then tests is a subcategory within that. And that presents a problem because we don't want a subcategory, we want two parallel categories. So we're going to do the same thing in the next session and move all those others into a category, just we'll call it homework. And pretty straightforward.